technology.
No, everybody is just picking the carcass of this thing. And when it needs, something bad's got to happen to just reset stuff. Like, everybody needs to get reset a little bit.
Don't say that. We're coming up on the election.
I said it into a microphone. But it's looking like this squirrel could be a big factor.
Why is this squirrel story deciding an election? This is so annoying.
I actually think it's, of all the stories that could be deciding the election, I think it's a good thing that this is the one that we should be talking about this.
Okay, here's my thing, is screw the people, screw the government who did this, screw the lady who called it in, screw all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this is an especially MAGA thing. I think everybody is on the same page.
Yeah.
Is screw this Karen, screw the New York Wildlife Department, hang them all up.
Yeah, but this is a perfect example of the government is too big and too powerful, and the idea that we are the land of the free is a joke. And this story perfectly encapsulates that.
Well, here's the thing, why should this go to Trump or not? This is a state issue. This is a New York state issue. This isn't the federal.
Sure.
This is the state of New York. So
Yeah.
if you're going to go into like a federalist kind of way of thinking, the state of New York can conduct itself how it pleases.
Sure.
The federal government can't come in and say X, Y, and Z unless they're going to make something through the legislator. And you know how complicated that is? They're not going to do it.
You can't just come into somebody's house and take their animal and kill it.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of legislation. It's like a lot of words to do that on a federal level that carries over to the state level and makes it through both houses of Congress and to the president's desk.
Look, I'm just saying that this story is radicalizing to me.
And it should be. I'm just like, it should be. I'm just like, how does this now translate into policy?
Trump, right?
Like, well, no, I'm against all of these people, and I'm glad this Karen got doxxed, not necessarily doxxed, but I'm glad she got called out.
Well,
and
there's a lot of pushback that this woman, I'm not even going to say her name, was even responsible. Because
all right, let's have the story.
Yeah, tell the
Start to
story. You
finish.
tell the story.
Okay, so there's this influencer couple. They have a wildlife refuge, or want to have a wildlife refuge, an aspiring wildlife refuge in New York State on the Pennsylvania border.
Very rural part of New York.
Very rural. And they make these TikToks with the pet squirrel. And they have a pet squirrel, they have a pet raccoon, they have a bunch of other pets.
Right. And it was an injured raccoon that they found, and it was an injured squirrel that they found and nursed it back to health. According to everything that I read about it, they actually attempted to release it back into the wild, but it came back and it was injured.
Aww.
Right. Like it's incapable, and that happens. That happens a lot. A lot of animals that are in zoos. That's the situation.
I don't want to live in the wild. If you try to release me in the wild, I'm coming back immediately. The wild sucks.
We're trying really hard to get to the woods, so
We're not going in the wild. We still have a grocery store and shit. We just have a better cage over there.
Anyway, go on.
Okay, so this lady who lives in Texas is seeing their TikTok videos with this trained squirrel, and she calls in a complaint to the New York Wildlife Management. Many complaints. And then they raid his house.
Well, they get a warrant from a judge.
They do. I skipped over that.
To raid the house.
Yes.
And then they do.
They do. Apparently, they tossed the house, according to this man.
They made the couple sit outside for 5 hours. Stopped them from feeding the other animals that they have.
Which is just, come on.
And the other thing that I read was they are like in the final stages of having the approval that they would need to actually have these animals as rescues.
I saw that. They had put in the application.
Yeah.
And so they came and they said that the squirrel bit one of the investigators. Now, this man is saying he saw no evidence of that. Nevertheless, the squirrel and the raccoon were put down, like within 48 hours of the raid.
Yep.
And that's the story. They just came into this man's house off of a tipster who's thousands of miles away, doesn't affect her at all.
Grounds for civil war. This is grounds for war.
Who's defending the people who killed the squirrels?
I don't know. I have seen some people just in Twitter comments saying like, well, it's against the rules and squirrels can carry rabies and blah 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 blah.
People can carry rabies. Did you know that?
I do know that.
People
yeah.
can have rabies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but we usually don't.
Right. But this does sort of, this, again, I see why this is radicalizing. And this is, to me, good radicalization. It raises the question of, like, why do they have the resources to
Yeah.
send an entire, like, flip the house over SWAT team to investigate a pet squirrel?
Yeah, so when you think there's got to be like, what, 10 guys there, they're all getting paid, what, 40 an hour?
Maybe, I don't know.
Plus the cars, plus this testing. Like, it just adds up. And, like, the government seems to have all this money, but it's like, if this one raid didn't happen, so what is that? Everyone in the state of New York gets another nickel or gets another few cents?
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the amount of people in the chain of people that it would have had to go through
Yeah.
to get the approval to do this, to actually set this in motion, and none of them went like, well, if you watch the videos, it seems like this is a pet squirrel that is not a danger
Yeah.
to anybody.
So none of them are thinking independently. They all just become cogs in a wheel.
Right, and that's
They
where
get
it
there.
gets really scary.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets people like me who, again, have absolutely no thought of ever voting for Donald Trump going, like, maybe we do need to get rid of some of these people in the government.
No, we definitely need to get
Like,
rid
there are
of some of
too
these
many people.
Now, I was watching a video about this. It was from a tax guy, and he was explaining it. He was like, yo, the government is the biggest employer. If we just let go of all the useless people in the government, what's that do to the unemployment rate?
Well, what I just saw, because I cannot believe the reality that we have to live in, but Elon Musk is potentially going to be in charge of cutting back government spending if Donald Trump wins. And I just saw that his plan that he put on Twitter and he said in a speech is that they want to basically lay off a lot of people in the government, but give them 2 years salary, like severance,
Okay.
to give them time to go get new jobs.
Yeah. All right.
Seems fair.
2 years.
I mean, that's better than fair. That's amazing.
Yeah, and like some retraining or something. In that time, you can go and get retrained and then maybe contribute to the private sector. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but yeah, there's way too much government bloat. And it's not even just that you're hiring these people, it's like full benefits package
Yeah.
that goes along with it. I just hope they get rid of the right people. Because, like, there's administrators and then there's teachers.
Right.
We need more teachers and we need less administrators.
Yeah.
And we need to get rid of, like, a lot of the government contracts
Yeah.
and consultants and all this stuff. We see the worst of it in California.
How do
No.
you mean?
Well, because just the way California operates. Remember when Bill Maher was trying to get solar panels on his house?
Yes.
It took a
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
And they were trying to build that toilet up in Oakland, and they couldn't build a simple toilet. It was just, but it cost them millions of dollars.
Right. And that's where Trump is winning on the narrative. Like, that is insane, and that is overregulation.
But that's in California. Once again, that's a state problem.
Right. Yeah.
So what is he going to do with the federal government?
I don't know, but that's the problem with this entire country is that, like, these lines are so blurred and stupid. And we get to vote one time on the guy who represents the whole country, but you're right, he doesn't actually, like,
What's
we
he
got to
gonna
be
do for
voting in
New
California.
York?
Nothing. I don't
But it is. It's like it's just a general disgust with the way things are.
It is. That's why I get it. That's why I say I get it. I don't think you should vote for him because I don't think he's a serious person and he doesn't actually know any of this. Actually, the only thing he actually talked about on Joe Rogan in that interview that he sounded like he knew what he was talking about was the building regulations.
Which he would know from
Right.
years of doing that with his father.
Right. But that's it.
Yeah.
And it was very narrow. It was about, like, how you pour concrete, which actually surprised me.
Which we kind of need. Did you see that dam in Spain, that Roman dam in Spain that held up 2,000 years later?
No.
Apparently, Spain's been recently hit with some of the worst floods of the century, so I don't know what that means. But hundreds of people have died. And this Roman dam that's 2,000 years old held.
Wow.
And it's saved the town. So sometimes pouring concrete is what you need to know at that time. So I'm not even gonna diss that. If he can pour concrete really, really well, then that's something. But yeah, I just don't see how screw all this translates into changing state laws in New York or California. Now, that having been said, I hope the people of New York throw these people out. And I say that because we bought land in New York
Yeah, I wanted to buy land in Maine,
But that's all.
in the middle of nowhere, Maine.
Yeah, you wanted to move me off the coast of Maine to this island. It was like an hour off the coast.
Vinyl Haven, it's perfect. It's a wonderful
I
place. You
know.
wouldn't do it.
Looking back, I'm like, we should have just moved
We
to
absolutely
that
should.
island.
You can get 5 acres of land there for $20,000.
Ugh, we should have just moved to that island. Just
Yeah.
said
But
forget
now we're
it
in the
all.
highest taxed area of maybe the country, as far
New
as
York.
school taxes. Yeah.
But they're good schools. But yeah, we went from California to now we're gonna go to New York soon, and it's like, oh.
If you had let me be impulsive, we would have a little piece of land on an island in Maine right now.
Yeah, okay, so there's Maine. There's also New Hampshire. New Hampshire legendarily does not go along with this.
Right.
It's
But
a very difficult state of difficult people.
that's true. But the actual, your property taxes in New Hampshire are higher than almost anywhere else in the country.
That's true. And people are like, why don't you move to Texas? Like, well, we can't?
I can't.
We just
Texas.
can't.
I'm not a Texas person. I am a Northeast person.
Yeah, we're both Northeast people, and they're driving us insane. But we still have to live amongst them because they're family.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of really describes a lot of progressive liberal America right now. I think MAGA thinks that we're completely nuts, and it's just like, no, we hate those people more than you
Yeah.
because we're closer to them.
Well, what's crazy to me is that the MAGA movement without Donald Trump, with a reasonable person who is capable of like actually talking about the issues that they say are what they're voting on, would be very effective, I think.
Do you think so?
I think so. Somebody who can talk reasonably without being a psychopath about the problem with too much immigration and the need
Yeah.
for a strong border. I know a lot of Democrats actually agree with that.
I don't even think. I think you could probably be a psychopath and talk reasonably and win against the left right now.
Well,
Like you could be gumming up there and saying, "Look, if you screw up twice, we're gonna imprison you for your whole life.
Right.
You steal twice, we'll imprison you for your whole life. If you don't have your passport, we're gonna kick you out of the country." And then just say a bunch of other racist and psychotic things. But if you said them in full sentences, I think a lot of the country would be like, "Yo, this guy's making a lot of sense."
And I guess that's what's scary, and that's why this two-party like mono system that we have, because both parties are paid for by the same people. We just watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh yeah, describe
And
that to the people.
So Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is about a regular Joe who gets like somehow appointed to be a senator.
yeah,
Like a senator dies, and the governor of that state needs to appoint a senator. The governor's being pressured by a big businessman in that state to appoint somebody who's going to do what the businessman wants.
Yeah.
But the governor's kids love this guy because he's in the papers for being like an outdoorsy person. So Mr. Smith gets elected or just appointed as senator, and he goes to Washington, and he wants to do something while he's there. So he decides he's going to like push for a national boys camp to go like learn how to meet kids from all over the country and like do
Hunt and
outdoorsy stuff.
fish, whatever.
Yeah,
you have
whatever.
there.
But the land that he wants to do it on, there's already plans on that land from the other senator from that state and the big businessman.
Yeah, to build a dam. They want to dam it up.
They want to dam it so that the businessman can make all this money. So Mr. Smith basically pushes back against that because he's like, but my fellow senator, you're just doing the bidding of this businessman? That's crazy. So he refuses to go along with it. And then in the movie,
Yeah.
they basically show what happens when you don't go along with it. So they basically frame him for having bought the land that he was proposing and was trying
Yeah.
to sell it back to himself at the expense of the government for a huge profit.
All
and they
lies.
set him up. It was all lies. And then he has to filibuster on the Senate until his name can be cleared, kind of. It's actually a really good movie, and it really holds up. If you like, what's the Christmas movie?
It's a Wonderful Life.
If you're a fan of It's a Wonderful Life, it's James Stewart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible.
And it's like 100 years old or like 80.
1938.
Oh, all right.
82
years old.
WW2.
Yeah. So it's really old, and it's like, wow, things haven't changed much, except not everybody's in a suit now and acting so respectably.
It really does, in a very sad way, kind of just show you how the government works. It's like, and I think the movie was supposed to like actually just explain how a bill becomes a law and all that.
Yeah, because she has that good monologue where she's like, first we gotta do this, and then this, it goes
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah, but you really see how, like, yeah, this is how every single senator is chosen to be your senator by the business interests in that state. They're people that they know they can control.
Yeah.
And this is even before getting into the, like, they have compromise on all these people.
Oh yeah, no,
Right.
this is just money.
Yeah.
This is just money. And this is before Citizens United, so before it even got insane. Right now it's completely insane because now you have to add in the PACs.
Yes. And now they have super PACs and whatever. It's a completely broken, untenable system, which again makes me, and I'm not voting for Trump, and I'm not advocating anybody vote for Trump, but I feel like this whole clip is going to be me saying why I understand people siding with Trump, because he does feel like a guy on the outside of this system. But just because he's a guy on the outside of the system doesn't mean he's actually going to do anything good.
Well, was he on the outside of the system when he was serving before?
I mean, was
And he said on Joe Rogan that he couldn't be because he needed people that were familiar with Washington.
Yeah,
to run
no,
it, so.
really great leadership. He blamed everybody else
Yeah.
for all of his failures,
So
which is
def-
what they say you should do as a leader.
Yeah,
Always
no.
blame other people.
No, of course. So it was de facto, we have to have the deep state working for us. So then what are you? You're a figurehead. And that's the criticism of every president, is that you're just a figurehead of this faceless entity that is the deep state.
Yeah.
And you can only do so much while you're there, and you have to appoint people who know what they're doing, which means the deep state is just perpetuated.
And then you get all these people just hiding within the government who want to kill your pets.
Well, that should be something. And I was talking to you earlier about this, but, you know, back in the 1500s, the Catholic Church was very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
They had the power to do so. Now the Catholic Church is very hands-off because they have to convince you to stay as a part of it.
All right.
I'm not saying that's the way it's going to go with government, but I do see that there's a possibility there because, I mean, at some point the government has to fear its people.